Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Bold, Beautiful Borderline podcast. It's your host, Sarah. And today I'm with like a long-term podcast community friend, Claire. Claire's been on the podcast before. It's funny, you were on the podcast with my ex-boyfriend like a long time ago. Such a
Oh my
sweet
God.
episode.
Yes, that was. Oh my gosh. I was back in my undergrad at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
Yeah,
my
what was
goodness.
that? Maybe 2021,
22? I don't even know.
late 2021, early 2022, probably. Yeah, that was cute and fun. Claire is here today for a fun reason, and this is going to be an interesting episode because I think people know by now I have strong feelings about um, people with borderline working in the field, both very positive feelings and also some hesitation. And so Claire and I are going to talk about what when she sent me a text message, and we're going to get into it, but I was like, yes, this is what I've been trying to tell people. This is
Yeah.
what we have to talk about. So I'm so excited that Claire is going to talk today about kind of like her experience being in her practicum, because she's starting to meet with clients as a therapist. I will let you give the background there, but I also just want to say this is a me thing, not a you thing, but I feel like it's on my heart that I have to get off, which is when you got engaged, I was so deep in my marriage and divorce pain that I was like so triggered. It
Oh,
was,
really?
I, I had to, like, Claire, I didn't know that you could like mute people on Instagram. I had to like unfollow you, and I'm not following you on Instagram, and I want to follow you back, but I didn't want you to know about this, like through me following you back without us having a discussion about it, because obviously the borderline brain is just like, fuck everyone that's getting married. I haven't been to a wedding since my own, other than my second wedding.
Yeah, I was gonna
um,
say, yeah. You got
yeah.
married. Yeah.
So now, obviously, I saw your photos and I was like, oh my God, they're so beautiful. But like when you got engaged, probably like a year and a half ago, 2 years.
I was engaged for so long because I've been in school. I got engaged in 2022, end of
Okay, yeah.
2022.
So obviously, my divorce was in 2021, so you can probably understand. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I was so triggered that I just like couldn't control it, and I unfollowed everyone who was pregnant and engaged that year. So I just want you to know that like distance was because of my trauma, but I really hope us talking about this doesn't leave you feeling rejected. But I just wanted to make sure you knew that before we record. And I'm like super good with it and so happy that you have like a loving, beautiful marriage.
Thank you. No, I'm like, I'm kind of someone when it comes to like social media, I need to get better at following people that like are not, what is the point of social media? Like we go on there to interact with things we like. Like, why are we following things that may like bring us negativity or things like that? And so there are no hard feelings there. I feel bad just because with school and everything, I haven't been as like interactive in like BBB like universe just because I'm so busy. So honestly, like there's no hurt there, and I appreciate your communication, and I get it because I get that way like now with people that are like having kids because I'm not ready to have a kid right now. It's like the opposite for me. So like all my friends are having kids and I'm like feeling the pressure now that I'm married. So I get the correlation. So there's zero hard feelings.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Okay, so Claire reached out because she's in her master's. Give us the update. Where are you? It's a master's in family therapy or counseling, but tell us what it is, where you're at in it, what your experience has been the last however long you've been in school. Give us the update.
Okay, so I am in a clinical mental health counseling program, Master's of Science, and I it's a 3-year program, 2.5 if you're like really following along and rigorous. So I will graduate in a year from now. So I started in the fall of 2022 and I'll graduate in May 2025. Thank God. I'm so exhausted. I'm ready to be done with school. And yeah, I just started my practicum in the end of May. So I go to school like all year round, like as most master programs do. It's sadly not like undergrad and you get to take the summer off. And so my practicum is really short because I'm in the summer semester and they make it like shorter. So like normally like a fall or spring semester is like 16 weeks and I'm in a 12-week one, which is a lot of pressure to get like hours. If you guys don't know, like with practicums, you have to like meet a certain amount of direct hour and a certain amount of indirect hours. And so direct hours is like 40 hours. And now that doesn't sound like a lot, but in 12 weeks and you're only scheduled 6 clients a week and they may or may not all show up, like it can get a little nerve-wracking. So far it's been good. Uh yeah, definitely has been a big transition for me. Like as Sarah said, I just got married and I literally came home for my honeymoon and started my practicum all within 1 week, which was like, holy crap, a whirlwind. Like I was already someone transitioning from like being engaged to like marriage and like grieving that this beautiful wedding's over. And then like now having to do like work with other people and like also regulating myself and like what does it mean, and there's so many things I did not know about being a therapist until I did it. Like what is clinical paperwork? Like no one taught me how to write clinical notes, and that was super frustrating. I felt super stupid, to be honest. Like the first week I felt like very incompetent, and yeah, I guess I'm just rambling at this point, but it definitely has been a big, big transition and realizing like school does not prepare
Prepare
you
you.
in the way
Mm-mm.
it should.
And it's interesting. I'm so excited we're here because all of the other episodes with people have been talking about the preparation for graduate school, the preparation for being a therapist, what it will look like long term, right? And this is where it may seem like I am judgmental when people listen to me, when I'm like, are you ready? Have you done other things? Do you know why you're doing this? Do you know why you're becoming a therapist? Because if you are becoming a therapist to help yourself, understand yourself, and help people the way you have been helped, it will be devastating work.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't really understand that until you're in it. Having this conversation with you, I'm really excited, but I also have to acknowledge like the conversations I've had with other people, I think maybe people have thought I was controlling or accusatory or whatever, but really, I mean, everybody knows that's my ADHD and my passion and my like want to kind of motivate people in a direction that I think would be beneficial to them, but that's all my transference, right? Like I have transference with my younger BPD babies, just like we have transference as therapists. And I actually decided after this conversation with you, I'm not going to have any more conversations on the podcast for probably like a year or so with other people with borderline who are pursuing a graduate program in mental health because it's triggering to me.
It's a lot.
Even though I 110% believe in people with borderline being in the field, but exactly what you said, nothing prepares you for what it's like to talk to, in my case, 25 people a week, ages 12 to 65, processing sexual trauma, physical trauma, neglect. They don't have secure housing. They don't have enough food. They can't find a provider to get them stable on meds. We need IOP and hospitalization, but we can't find it. I do that 25 times a week.
Yeah, it's
People
exhausting.
don't understand that. And I want people to be prepared for that. So that's why I get so like excited about it. You have to go into this knowing the impact on you, on your relationships, on your lifestyle. You have to go into it knowing that you have power in the therapeutic role. And anybody who says that they're like a therapist doesn't have power is not understanding the way that you deliver and administer services, the way that you listen to people and validate people. That's powerful. That's power. You're on the other side of if people can and can't get therapy because you write their authorizations. So anyways, you're right. They don't prepare you.
funny you say that because there was a point right before I applied for my graduate program. And I remember we were DMing at the time and I asked you about it.
I told you to
And
get an
you really
MSW.
like questioned me. You questioned me about it because, and I like, I was like, okay, well, Sarah doesn't know what she's talking about. Like, I'm so ready to do this. And you are so right. Like, it is to no offense to anyone, but like, you really have to be able to like, put yourself aside. And I even still struggle, not like fully aside. You obviously have to take care of yourself, but like at one point in like all of it, it comes down you're giving someone a service and they deserve that service and your full attention to them. And like you can get yourself to a point, I think, where you're not like 100%. Like I'm never going to be 100% regulated like the average person is. Like I just know that that's how I am
No,
as a
never.
human being.
We have to be
Never.
realistic.
Yeah.
We have to be
And
realistic.
I'm not, and I never will be, and that's something I've had to like struggle with, and also something I really struggle with, which I never talk about loud, but I feel a lot of people may resonate with in this space, is that like when I started doing this work and even in school, I started panicking, being like, oh my God, I can never have problems again, and my problems don't matter, and nobody will care, and I need to be perfect, and that, oh my God, no, like it's not all about me anymore, and will anybody care if it's about me? Like it, which sounds like, oh my gosh, Claire, you're so selfish, but
Nope.
it's
Mm-mm.
a
It
whole
doesn't.
thing. Yeah. It's like a whole thing of, oh my gosh, am I going to be cared about like the way I care about other people?
Because you are giving. And again, once you graduate and you get into this work, the average clinician probably sees like 18 to 23 clients a week.
Mm-hmm.
That may not sound like a full-time job. That's 18 to 23 hours
Yeah.
of doing nothing but listening to people's trauma, to their pain, to their suicidal ideations, to their plan for suicide. And you have to put everything going on in your life aside, no matter how triggering it may be in that appointment, because you're not
Yep.
you. You have to be a therapist, but you are still you. And by the
Yep.
way, you're not going to figure out that part yet.
I'm lost in that right now.
Yes, you're not going to figure out that part yet. You've got some time. You're not supposed to. And you will learn the things that you need to learn along the way, and you will notice what feels good and what doesn't feel good and what works and what doesn't work. But everything I'm talking about is from like years of fucking up and failing and watching and observing how I feel and other people feel. But like you're experiencing this now.
It's a lot thrown at you at once, and it's like a relationship that I cannot describe. It's unlike any other relationship you have with another person ever. And like as someone who has gone to therapy for over 10 years at this point, it nothing prepared me to be on the other side of it, in my opinion. Sorry, my husband's getting home right now, so puppy's gonna get excited. But anyway, it's just I talk about that with my cohorts all the time, is how do you balance the like power that you have while also staying true to you, and also like making, everyone is in competition, I feel, with one another in my, at least in my program, because we work in a community clinic at my university. So this is kind of how my practicum is set up. My university has a community clinic on campus. So it's not for the college students that go there, if that makes sense. It's for everyone in our city.
Is it all? It's got to be all people who are uninsured, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And
These are beautiful. So let's just pause,
yeah,
right?
yeah, go ahead.
These are beautiful programs. Master's level students in probably every state in this country are in service of all of our folks who are uninsured. So that's going to be a lot of people who are living in this country undocumented. People who are in that middle space of I make 2 cents over what Medicaid allows for me, but I can't afford to pay $300 out of pocket for insurance. People who aren't safe to utilize their insurance and have things about their mental health documented. So they go see someone who isn't going to maintain the same types of records. Anyways, so that's what Claire's talking about.
Yeah, so it's a lot. You see absolutely everyone come through the door, like anyone and everyone. So it's great exposure. And at the same time, it's a lot. I'm really enjoying my time there. Don't get me wrong. Like, I really am enjoying my time. I've learned a lot. I also question sometimes, am I the right person to be helping people with the needs that I see? Like you're talking about, like again, like housing and just complete economic crisis, and also people with like chronic illness that has put them in a position to be in that place. People with, I could go on and on about this, but like my clinic, to not their detriment, I use my words choice because like, you know, I pick my words carefully because we want to help people, and at the same time there are some needs that are needed to be seen by people of a higher degree who are more experienced. And I've had a few of those experiences where I felt completely lost because I'm like, I don't know how to help this person, and it goes home with me. And that's the other thing is my supervision has been kind of wild. That's
Okay,
just
before
another
we talk
story.
about supervision, because supervision is a whole different thing.
That's a whole different thing.
So this is where people with borderline thrive in therapy as therapists. We are determined, gritty motherfuckers. We will find the resources for people. I fully believe when you're in community mental health care like you are, 3/4 of the work is helping them stabilize. No narrative processing therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, TF, radical emotive behavioral therapy, none of that is going to do anything until
Nope.
we are housed and fed. So DBT skills, teaching them DBT skills, most important thing that you can do, right? Because so many of the folks coming into your outpatient program are crazy dysregulated because they're going through such hard stuff. This is where you thrive. This is an environment, Claire, where you teach people what you know, what you've been taught in DBT. Number one thing, because I know they're super dysregulated and anxious when they see you, right?
Absolutely.
I also know how to find resources for people.
Hmm.
This is where you thrive. And so this is kind of the dialect, because people with borderline are going to be committed and invested and do really good work. On the other side of that, this is where we struggle. And this is the piece that I really, really, really like people to be aware of. And the piece where people get mad at me, like Claire did. The piece where I got pissed at people 10 years ago when they said this to me was because I thought I knew better. As people with borderline, we struggle to find worth.
Hmm.
It's really easy to feel worthy when you see people you have helped get better. We cannot build our worth around that, even though that's easy. That's 25 hours of your week that you can feel worthy. If those 25 hours go well, what happens when your clients don't do well? Right? That leaves you feeling incredibly unworthy. And then we forget the therapeutic process has nothing to do with us. All our job is to provide them validation, some guidance, some tools. But then what people do with it is what they do with it. It has nothing to
Hmm.
do with us. But you are experiencing what all of us experience in the very beginning, where you're like, I need to help them because that's my job. And if I can't help them, then I am going to wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it constantly.
Yeah.
You can only do what you can do. What they do with it is theirs. What they succeed in is their success. What they fail in is their failure. And that has to be separate from your life. your identity, your worth, how you feel about your own relationships. They're not the same. But tell me about how hard it is for you to find that line right now. Because it's
Oh
hard
my
for me all
gosh.
of the time.
It's incredibly difficult. This is the part that I struggle with the most, honestly. I do struggle with dissociation, so sometimes I'm able to like in the best way dissociate away from it, but then that takes away from other parts of my life. I'm not able to enjoy my time with my husband or at home or just, not, just relaxing. It's not healthy to do that all the time, but I don't know. I'm saying I'm still figuring that out. I feel like I'll forever be figuring it out. I carry emotions with me all the time. I mean, it's difficult too because being in school, you're being graded for this crap, which is a whole other level that I'm like, how are you even grading me on this? This is we could I won't even touch that. But that adds another layer to it too, because this is my school. So then I'm having to think of it outside of my time in the room with them. I'm having to think about it my time when I go home because it's school. And then I'm also getting critiqued on it by someone else. And I say critique, I say it's feedback, but critique's feedback, whatever you want to call it. I had an incident where I had to call DHHS or CPS for the first time by myself. This is when I reached out to Sarah and we figured this would be a good time to talk. And that was a time when I was home alone in the night and I'd never done this before in my entire life. And I had to sit about it and think about it all weekend because I didn't see my supervisor or anybody until the next week because it was a Friday. Like, I still am recovering from that. It was honestly, I laugh now, but like I was extremely traumatized because I had no idea what it was doing.
Yes.
And I had, you know, a client in distress. What do I do? I've been doing this for at that point 2 weeks.
And
And
did
I
you
feel I
have a
didn't have tools.
supervisor available to guide you through the process? Someone on the phone with you or Zoom while you were calling CPS?
Text.
Okay. And so this is one of the things too is, and by the way, we're going to spend some time. I want to talk about your wins and what you're doing well and what you're stoked for, because there's a ton
Okay.
of that. There's so much of that. I already know that you're doing good work. But this is the unfortunate thing is student therapists are workers. My first practicum in my program was 400 hours. My second practicum in my program was 800 hours over a 3-year period. Not all of those were direct client hours, but a lot of them, obviously. 3-year period, I was working full time,
Hmm.
400 hours across 2 semesters, and then 800 hours across 2 semesters the second year. You're working full time, going to school full time, and then pretty much full time in your practicum. And your supervisor in your practicum is supervising like 12 practicum students. And it's free work. And it's free work that's really hard that you don't feel like you're guided or prepared for because the system doesn't have enough funds to have a supervisor be readily available to you. Claire, there's nothing you can do wrong in making a CPS call or an APS call or an RCS call. The only thing you can do wrong is not reporting it.
Yeah.
RCS, CPS, APS is responsible for doing all of the investigation and asking all of the questions. As long as you're honest with them, you can't do anything wrong other than your heart hurts. That's the worst part. But uh, this is another thing people have to be prepared for. I called CPS the day that I married my husband,
Oh my goodness.
3 hours before. I've called APS on a family member.
Mm.
You're not a mandated reporter for those 23 hours a week. You're a mandated reporter 24/7, 365. I've probably made 100 calls in the last 10 years. As a therapist, we're professional secret keepers until we're not. And that, what you were talking about, feeling emotions, you are holding space for a lot of emotions. And that's heavy. And then you're holding space for your own outside of the work. And then you're holding space for your feelings within the work because you're going to have them.
Yeah. This this week, actually, I'll share like just a short story, but it really became evident to me because I'm finding, as someone who feels things extremely deeply, borderline, whatever you want to call it, I have almost been brought to tears this week in a session by someone's story. And that was super like, what's wrong with me? Like, you are supposed to be the one who is holding it together. And that also has gone with me. Like, there's just this weird dynamic of having to have it figured out all the time and feeling like you have to be the hero.
You're not the hero.
Yeah.
Right? That's the thing. Nobody has told you probably yet. Also, I'm seeing myself like, by the way, I'm going into session after this and I look like this because a therapist doesn't have to look a certain way or do things a certain way, right?
Oh, we
So
should talk about that. Oh my God, the way they teach you in grad school how to act and how to look is so like robotic. It is wild.
that's the huge benefit of working telehealth. So I will not, so boundary setting, I will not see a client in person because it helps me
Hmm.
with that emotional energy. I also don't have to do the commute, which is like more energy. So setting really good boundaries around your practice someday, even if you're in community mental health, is like how you manage this stuff, right? And you're not in control of that yet, which is why it's even harder. But so you got brought to a tier in session. Like
I did.
you're human. I have been brought to a tier or two in sessions before. I can think of probably like 5 times over the years. And I literally said to the person, the story that you're telling me feels so heavy on my heart for young you
Hmm.
that it brings a tear to my eye for young you. Right. So you just reflect it back on them and like
Yeah,
as a way of them understanding how heavy it is. Right. And I'm sure that's what you did. Is that what you did?
I did. I took a moment and I said, my heart hurts for you because it did. And I like kind of validated because again, you're completely right. It was something that happened to them when they were younger. And I was telling them, you deserved so much more. You deserved so much more. And this client is so resilient and strong and completely understood and it ended up being fine. And at the same time, you go back and you're sitting there with your cohorts and you're sitting there thinking like they're doing okay and like why am I like falling apart over here or like not falling apart. I don't fall apart like I think I used to. I've done a lot of work on myself, but definitely ruminating the confidence in me gets shaken a lot. That's like my biggest feedback I get from my supervisor all the time. I get feedback on my confidence all the time. Um, because I just question all I do. Am I doing the best? Like, I'm always the person in my supervision. Am I doing the best by this person? Am I doing enough? What am I doing wrong? Like, figure them out.
It's a part of the process and learning. Like, I'm glad that you're worried. And it's also a part of the borderline because you will hyper fixate on am I good enough? Right. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
like that's the line that you're just in the process of figuring out. But I almost cried thinking about like you did it. You
Mm-hmm.
reflected it back to them.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't make it about you in session. Like you use that as a tool to validate the severity of that childhood traumatic experience, I assume. That was a beautiful moment for them.
Yeah, that client is one that at first I got put on my caseload and I did the intake and I walked out and I said, that is a heavy trauma history and I don't feel prepared to do that. And I told my supervisor that and I said, this client I'm really worried about working with. And then I questioned, I was like, you're shutting it down before it's even happened. And that client has actually been one of my greatest experiences. I look forward to seeing them every week because I actually they are one of my ones where I've taught the most DBT skills, which I'm like comfortable. But this client has so much, just crisis control going, like, well, how do we get through the freaking day? And the resilience that people have taught me, like, that's what keeps me going at this time is the resilience of others. Um,
Yes.
that's the biggest thing I've been taught is like the human race is so resilient.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, well, we're all just like wanting to get back to our homeostasis, right? Pretty gritty. Um, it's funny for people with a ton of suicidal ideation, it's pretty hard to die, like this body wants to keep going, this brain wants to keep getting back. That's why we have these strong emotions. The emotions
Yep.
are serving a purpose for all of the trauma to help us get back to our baseline. I wish it wasn't so demonized. I wish people understood that that's what's happening is like that this brain that's disordered is presenting with these emotions or behaviors that might seem manipulative to get our needs met to try to come back to baseline, but people don't get that. Not that I need to get on that tangent, but so one of the things that I heard you say was like, I don't feel like prepared to do this, right? One of the things they don't tell you in graduate school is like when you get out, there's so many different avenues of therapy. So you may never want to work with people around their super intensive trauma. And that is okay. You can be a trauma informed provider and only do like solutions focused, kind of like skills based work with people. Because in 10 sessions of learning DBT skills and learning cognitive distortions and learning how to communicate boundaries, that gets a person ready to go do EMDR. So,
Yep.
like, you don't have to know. You don't have to want to do trauma work someday if it's too heavy for you. And that's where I'm at is I am not going to go do, I will do cognitive behavioral trauma focus therapy. I will help people get really good at their emotion regulation skills, distress tolerance skills. That is where I thrive. I will help them come out, help them transition. I will do all the things I like to do. And then I will say, it's time to move on to someone to help you do the next stuff.
That's a great reminder. I appreciate you telling me that because right now I don't have a choice. Um, especially just in the community work, that's again, it's anyone who comes in the door, obviously. And we have so many different like student therapists in my office. So I guess we could like switch around, but it's really like, no, I don't want to switch around. Like even though I'm like, this person over here may I feel they like focus on this more. I want to get my hours, right? So then it's like, no, I'm not giving this client away. My
Well,
internship,
and you
which I
do
don't
need the experience.
exactly and exactly. So it's not that I'm like thinking of passing people off. Like the only time I did was with that client I was saying. And I'm so glad I ended up like not like having anything like that happen because I have learned a lot. Um, my internship is going to be very different. So like I didn't mention this, but then my next 2 semesters, fall and spring, are internship. So like what Sarah was saying about like 800 hours, like craziness, that's where I'm headed next. And that's like 20 hours of my time a week. I'll be there twice a week. Right now I am at my clinic. I see 6 clients and I'm there. Just the way my schedule worked out, I had to split it up between like 4 days, which sucks. But anyway, it's going to be very different, very, very different for me. I'm going to be working at a medical school. So I'm going to be seeing medical students, which is going to be a whole different set of needs than what I'm seeing right now, which is a bunch of different needs. Yeah.
That's going to be cool. Maybe you'll get some like Grey's Anatomy type scoop.
I know. I'm
Listen,
really
like,
excited.
so here's
Really
the
excited.
thing. I fucking love working with teenagers because I'm like, what are these little brats talking about? And I say that with love, right? Because we were all bratty
Mm-hmm.
as teenagers. I love working with dysregulated teens who are like, that's not going to fucking work, Sarah. And I'm like, well, why don't we try it?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like sometimes you just hear some things that you just can't help but smile and laugh because you're like, humans are so funny.
They are extremely.
Oh, I hate to love it. Whenever I feel like I'm starting to get really tired, which it's important for me to say I am, this has been 3.5 years of 20 something clients straight a week, even when I was living in my van. I'm tired right now. And I'm starting to adjust my caseload to meet more of the skills-based work and less of the processing, just to kind of give myself some of that break from that burnout. Um, and I'm going through some med changes and some stuff like that to kind of navigate that. But like every time I'm like, man, this work, something happens and a client draws me back in and I'm like, yep, God damn it, this is why we do it. It's
Mm-hmm.
like a runner's
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. It's like, yes, that was so cool to watch them in that success. This is why we do it. And it's all worth it as long as we keep doing our work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That was what also part of the conversation part two I had with Sarah was I was like, I'm struggling. Like, how do you do this? And she's like, well, do you have a therapist? I was like, no, because I haven't been going for a while because I put it on the back burner. And she's like, well, first of all, that's like what you're gonna do first. And I was like, okay. And it was literally the next day I called back my old therapist, who is the most lovely human in the world. And I've been going to her since, and that has been amazing. So, yeah, I guess any advice if you do decide to take the leap to do this is you have to have your own support therapist. I feel like they don't stress that enough in my schooling. They kind of are like, do your own work. Well, what does that mean? Like, you can, but you can't like get outside of your own perspective. So having a therapist is 100% like a need I'm finding, especially when you're seeing clients.
It's ethical. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's really what it comes down to is I believe it's unethical as a provider to not have a provider at least on deck to like
Yeah.
check in with. It's also, in my opinion, unethical as a provider to not have a person you can do case consultation with. So if you're in private practice, that means hiring and paying a supervisor, even if you're licensed. I'm licensed in 2 states and I still have someone I can check in with for case consultation and case staffing. That's ethical. We are like maintaining my medication is easy now because it's ethical. Like I am responsible for being as healthy and safe as I can be because I am in service of these people and I do have a position of power. And if I'm burnt out, I'm not always going to write the best chart notes. If I don't write the chart notes with what we call the magic thread through the chart note, which really means justifying for paying for services, people don't get services paid for, right? So I have to show up as my best self. And really, what that means for people with borderline, number one, yes, get in therapy. Number two, you can't be in toxic relationships. You can't be in toxic relationships with your friends, with your parents, with your partner, with your fucking dog. That will be the number one thing that you struggle with transference with in your therapeutic relationship. It's really hard for me to observe people having really toxic relationship behaviors, especially my clients with borderline, if I feel like I'm going through that same thing in my real life, because I'm like, oh, well, have you tried this? Instead of like, what do you think you need?
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyways, that's a whole thing. And I think maybe we should come back and talk about this again, but I do not want to gloss over some of the good because everything we've talked about they're just the important things. I 1000% everybody I believe everybody with borderline can be and should be a wonderful therapist if that's what they want to do. I also 1000% believe that they're responsible for that ethical piece, which is understanding why, how, when, having the supports, being responsible for your own health. I didn't used to be responsible for my own health. I didn't have to. But like there have been times in my therapy where I wasn't sober.
Hmm.
I'm a much better therapist now. Obviously, I wasn't drinking in session, but like I'm a much better therapist now. I'm a more ethical provider. So, and I mean, I'm pretty mentally ill, so maybe other people don't have to think about it as much, but
No, I mean, there's just so many things you put a mirror up to yourself in this work. I mean, like for real. We didn't touch on this and it's like not that big of a deal in my opinion, but if you are, fun fact, like a big fear of mine, I hate watching myself or listening to myself. Like I probably won't even listen to this because I hate the sound of my own voice. Yeah, in my program and a lot of counseling programs, you do not get that choice because you are filmed. And I have to go over film with a supervisor, and I've had to literally pop my Ativan and walk in the room and do the supervision with the tape because that's the only way I'm going to learn. And that's kind of how it's been for me is like, okay, Claire, like you're just gonna have to do it. And like now that sounds very negative, but it's proven. I talked about resilience earlier. I've been very proud of my own resilience because there's been so many times any therapist student out there, I know you relate. You go home after a day of hard sessions or hard supervision, and you're like, what can I do with a counseling degree without getting my license? Like, you're Googling that. Like, you're trying to figure out, oh my God, am I making the right choice for my life? Am I doing the right thing? Did I do this for the right reason? The imposter syndrome is so real all the time. And I have faith that that will lessen, but I don't think it will ever 100% go away.
it shouldn't.
Maybe, and it shouldn't. That's exactly what I was going to say. And it shouldn't
The
because,
second that you become comfortable in this work from a like, you never worry about if you're doing it well perspective, it's too late to be doing it.
yep,
That's where you have to take time off.
that's what my supervisor said to me this week. Because again, I keep talking about that same client, but they are just someone who has a lot and it almost felt like venting at one point. And then I get in like my book head. That's what I call it, like the textbook. And I'm like thinking, well, counseling shouldn't be venting. And she's like, well, what did she need at that time? And I was like, and that's really what I have to center myself back into is like, I'm doing enough as long as I am centering myself around them in that moment.
I have two things about this, and then I want to make sure we talk about the good things. But this client is having a big impact on you, which I love, right?
Hmm.
Like huge impact on you. It's like challenging you and making you grow more in this therapeutic relationship than probably any of the others. It's fucking beautiful. Two things. One, it's not venting if you ask just one question that makes this person reflect. It's not
Yeah.
venting. That's therapy. Therapy doesn't always look like what we think it looks like.
Yeah.
In fact, today in my session, my client was we're riding the struggle bus, and we have been for a couple sessions of like, I don't fucking care. I'm just gonna relapse. And it's like, okay, well, relapse.
Hmm.
Like if you don't care, I don't care. So relapse and then give me a call. And then they were like, oh, okay. And I was like, you're telling me you're tired from therapy. Like, let's stop doing therapy. If you believe stopping therapy is going to be the thing that like helps you not relapse, I would rather us terminate our therapeutic session. You spend that 1 hour a week every week going out into the world and trying to find friends.
Yeah.
Therapy doesn't look like what it looks like. By the way, we came back to that person not needing to leave our therapeutic relationship because they said that our therapeutic relationship was the one that was helping them the most. Awesome. Wouldn't have bothered me either way if it wasn't. We would close for now. But they actually were able to identify it's, I do care, but I feel like I'm failing AA
Mm.
because AA isn't making me feel good anymore. And so we were like, okay, well, 2-week science experiment, stop going to AA. Let's find a
Yeah,
new
like what do
social
you
space.
need?
What do you need? This is not what I think. This is you tell me. And so when I heard you say, like, am I doing this right? Am I not doing this right? Ask them. Because my guy today was, I'm not, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care. And I finally, like 25 minutes in, I was like, well, if you don't care, why are you here? You know?
Yeah.
And then a couple minutes later, I was like, what do you need from me? Do we need to stop? You know? How is this going? Is this helping you? Like, do that every 4 sessions.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, because sometimes, and this is something you get told as a student therapist, but I find myself like, I'm like, yep, I told myself I wasn't going to do that. I'm like, how? I'm never going to do that. And now that I'm here, I'm like doing it is you want to fix. You just want to fix for them and you want to find the solution. And sometimes that gets, for me, very tunnel vision. And at the end of the day, it's like really take a step back and what are they needing? Really, really from you in this moment? And what
Yes.
are they really saying? What are they
Yes.
really feeling?
Yes. Yes. And I told that client today, I was like, listen, I'm not concerned. If what you're telling me is that you're spending too much time between group AA and individual, I'm not concerned if we stop doing therapy and you take this time back. I'm not concerned if you move out of sober housing. I'm not concerned if you stop going to group. I have been working with you long enough to know if you discharge from everything you're in, you will stay sober or you will relapse and then you will get sober again very quickly because I have seen it. And my client was like, you're the first therapist that has ever told me I could be okay if I stop going to AA and stop going to talk to my sponsor. And I was like, I trust you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, by the way, I'm not always the best therapist for people, right? But this is a good example of therapy doesn't look the way that we feel like it should. And that is also where I believe people with borderline really thrive. We're creative.
Yeah,
We're not going to say things in the way a normal therapist would. We
absolutely.
are we are impulsive, we are snarky sometimes. You're allowed to show up exactly as you are. Clean, not clean, looking like this, not looking like this, fidgeting, not fidgeting, walking on your treadmill, not walking on your treadmill, office or not. Just like practice trusting yourself.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that with me because that's something I've been in my head about, being on film, like how am I perceived? But really, like, I am a human being as well. And I'm super ADHD. I fidget in every single session. And I've caught myself like judging myself for it. Nobody said anything to me so far, but it's like that conscious like thing in the back of my head, something's telling me. And I'm like, but I'm giving them permission to also be themselves.
Yes. And that's what you tell people in the very beginning of the therapeutic relationship. I am messy. You are messy. We are not going to get this right all the time. If I fuck up, like I literally say that to people when I can tell that's an okay thing to say. Like people like me, which is the people I like to work with the most. If I fuck up, I need you to tell me. I
Mm-hmm.
will not always know if I'm making a mistake. So, like putting that responsibility back on the people because Claire, you can't read their minds.
I'm laughing right now because I had an exact session like that this week. My supervisor told me I became a real therapist this week because I had somebody get mad at me. It was everything. It was in the moment just pure panic, like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I didn't get it right and I missed the mark and I know that. And the moment I walk out of that office because it was on Zoom and I walk into my supervisor's office and I said, what just happened? But the best thing I learned from it, because in the end we did repair by the end of the session. And it was like my favorite thing learned so far, or I feel like I'm going to word it wrong, but like therapy is like a microcosm of like how people are in the real world. And like just by modeling, like that is appropriate and that is therapeutic. And yeah, it
Yes.
was a great experience.
Mm, I see you doing it.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate it. I really do. And I
Yeah.
appreciate all like your like I say expertise, and I know you'd be like, yeah, I know.
Mm-mm.
Shake every therapist is gonna be like that, but like your experience means a lot because going into it, you only can prepare. Human beings are something that will be studied till the end of the world, until whatever kills the planet and wipes out the human race, because we will never fully understand everything about being a human and the human experience. And that's why this work is so difficult, because every human being is different. And that's also the beauty in it. And that's also why I love it. So thank you.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. We have to follow up in like a year. We have to follow up
Yes,
in like a
please.
year. And then in a couple of years we'll collaborate on something. There's some cross state licensure kind of stuff that's in the works. So like in the future, my license may be recognized in another state that I didn't apply and do their board process through.
Oh,
So
cool.
who knows, maybe in like 5 years we can have a DBT group together. That'd be super fun.
I'm so
Um,
down. So down.
yes. I'm really proud of you, my friend, and
Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, talk to you soon. Bye, Sarah.
Thank you for tuning in to the Bold, Beautiful Borderline podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your content. That's super helpful for me in finding additional folks who want to listen to the show, want to feel seen, family members, partners who want to understand. You can also follow along at Bold Beautiful Borderline or at Sarah's Wellness Way on Instagram. For the blog and a more extensive list of resources, go to boldbeautifulborderline.com. There you can also request to be a guest on the show, or you can do my favorite thing and leave a voicemail to be played at one of our future episodes. All of this information can be seen below in the show notes. If you'd like to support the show and get exclusive perks, consider becoming a Patreon member. Your support helps me with creating content to destigmatize BPD and all the other wild mental health struggles that I discuss on this podcast. As always, thank you so much for guests and listeners alike. I love you. Until next time, keep living and seeking joy. Information in this podcast is not medical advice, but rather experience from individuals living with mental illnesses. If you want to try a treatment that you heard about, please consult your treatment team. The music in this podcast was created by a longtime friend of mine, Corey Evans from the Evergreen Band. You can find him on Instagram at _Evergreen Band. Cover art was created by my husband, Talon Abbott. Their information is in the show notes. There is no producer for this show. It's all me.